Hi, this is Fern G. Carr, website www.ferngzcarr.com. Welcome to my Facebook Live reading, Afterwards, Dark Humor, Part 3, Question and Answer. So now I'm going to look at the comments and see if you have any questions or comments. Like I say, please feel free to type them here. That would be really appreciated. Okay, so let's see. Yeah, comment was made by Shirley. Could use some humor during these strange times. That's very, very true. Shirley asked a question. Actually, I've been asked this question a few times if I'll be writing poetry related to the pandemic. That's a good question. And I have written a little bit about it. I mentioned this to someone last week. I tend to try not to focus on the pandemic too much in terms of my poetry for various reasons. It is pretty dark, and also I'm hoping that the pandemic will be over soon and people will be better and everything will move towards a more happier resolution. Shirley asked, oh, she liked A Witch in the Woods, thank you. She asked, does my writing affect my mood, like getting depressed or sad or having nightmares? That's really interesting because another thing that I tell people when I do my in-person readings, they usually ask about inspiration, things like that. And I keep a journal of ideas for poems. So sometimes I might be in a certain mood to write a certain type of poem, but not other types of poems. So first of all, if an idea strikes me, sometimes it will just nag me until I write the poem and just process it. And that's the case. But if not, sometimes I'll wait. So if, for example, I have an idea for a goofy poem, but I'm not particularly in a goofy mood, then I'll wait until I am. And I look through my journal of entries, and I've got, I would say at least 50 pages worth of ideas for various poems. So that's a good question. Let's see what else we've got here. Matthew said, where did you get your inspiration for your description of the feeling during job interviews? Very apt. You know, that's a good question. I honestly don't remember, but I do know that the interview process can be very stressful for people. And I think I was just thinking, okay, interview chair, different types of chairs. And for whatever reason, I thought of electric chair. And then I thought, wouldn't it be interesting to turn it around for something, that's seemingly innocuous to something that's so terrifying, but outwardly the symbolism in the poem represents maybe the fear and the, hopefully not terror, that the person feels within. Oh, Megan, that's so nice. She says, wow, it's kind of embarrassing to reach this. First of all, you're brilliant, and I love hearing how your poems are read in your own voice. My question is, what languages do you speak, read, and write in? Well, English, obviously, French, Spanish, Italian, Yiddish, and Chinese. And for Chinese, it's Mandarin, the Mandarin dialect. And you have to be very, very, she said, my job interview poem had me laughing like a hyena. That's good. I'm glad you enjoyed it. With Mandarin, speaking of poetry, so I've been taking Mandarin for a while, and I'm trying to get some of I've had my poetry in all those other languages published, but not in Mandarin just yet. So I was writing up an autobiography, because when you send things to publishers, you have to, submit a biography along with it. And so I wrote it in Mandarin, and I showed it to my teacher, and she kind of looked at it, and I guess it's very appropriate considering the content of what I wrote. But instead of saying I was a former lawyer, I told people in Mandarin that I was a serial killer. So, and I promise you I'm not, and I promise you A Serial Killer Saturday is not based on my life. It's imaginary, it's fictional. Oh, Herb, so nice to see you. Thank you. I'm very pleased to see you. Facebook friend who we comment back and forth. That's very nice. And he said, thank you. I do enjoy your readings and your poems. That's very much appreciated. Okay, I'll just see if there's anything else. So I don't know if you have any other questions at all. We still have a few minutes left. So if you want to ask me anything about the writing process, or, well, I'll just talk to you about the writing process, I guess. That's something, you know, people will often ask, how long does it take to write a poem? And, you know, it's easy enough to dash off a poem when you're in the mood to do so. But the question is how long do you wait? How many drafts do you do before you actually send it out to a publisher? Now, all the poems that I do, that I read online, of course, in these readings, and I have on my YouTube channel, they've all been published at least a minimum of one time. But before I send anything out to a publisher to be published, I would say that I have to do at least 7 drafts before I would even consider it. And you know, it's a very interesting exercise too, and what I would advise beginner poets actually is that if you are going to, you know, send your work out to someone, look at it with fresh eyes. Don't just write something and dash it off, you know, send it off somewhere. You know, it's important to have confidence in what you write, and it's important to persist in your work. But I find quite often, you know, I'll come back to a poem and I'll say to myself, you know what? I'd like to change this. I'd like to switch this around. And it's almost as though you're giving your brain a chance to rejuvenate itself, to rest. And you honestly do look at your work with fresh eyes. And then you send it out. And especially, this isn't just my experience, but with a lot of other poets too, even after something's been published, you know, you'll look at it and you'll say, you know what? I could have done such and such a thing a little bit differently, or why did I use this word instead of another word? Okay, so Matthew asks, do you find any inspiration in any area, or do you tend to focus more on your own interests? And again, that's a really good question. What I do sometimes is, you know, I'll see something on the news, or I'll read an interesting article, or something will happen, you know, in my own experience to someone I know or to friends. And then I write a poem about it. Or I've written a lot of poems about subjects as well that I'm interested in. I've written a lot of poems about science and about math. But then again, I enjoy art. So I enjoy the creativity of doing a lot of visual poems and experimental poems. Now, those are a little bit harder to do a reading for, because obviously it's being relayed to you aloud, and you can't necessarily see the printed page, and that's very critical for those types of poems. But yeah, so to answer your question, I think the inspiration, without, you know, sounding cheesy about it, the inspiration is life. And basically, you know, you just see what happens and what's going on in your life, and there's a poem. So on that philosophical note, it's 9:30, so I would like to thank everyone so very much for attending, and I hope that I get to see you next week for my final reading in this series, Mind and Forms. Take care, everyone. Stay safe. Stay well. Bye. Acknowledgements. Part 3 is an excerpt from the original full video, which was kindly sponsored by the League of Canadian Poets and the Canada Council for the Arts. Thanks very much for watching my video. If you enjoyed it, feel free to like, and please be sure to subscribe. For more poetry, my book Shards of Crystal is available on Amazon. Thanks again, and stay tuned for a new video every Wednesday.